And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's the Finest Unfiltered. Monday morning, there's more content for you. New York City, NYPD, and of course, what's going on across the nation. Good morning, everybody. Monday morning. I hope you had an awesome weekend. It's me and Marlon, rocking hard. John, of course, took the week off. He's measuring his height right now. He's trying to get his tan on. He's probably flexing, ready for his solo videos without a shirt. So, John, good morning. Hope you're having a good time, brother. You deserve it. So, Marlon, listen, before we jump into it, how's your weekend? What's going on, man? What are you doing?
Yo, morning, bro. Morning, guys. Yeah, my weekend was quiet. Nothing really going on now in the doldrums of winter, I guess. Pretty awful day today. Very cloudy, and looks like it's gonna rain all day. So hopefully though this is the last of it, the last couple weeks, and hit spring in a couple weeks. But yeah, it's a quiet weekend for me. You?
All good. I got to laugh over here. Mikey G, good morning, my brother. Mikey G, you have been a great friend to the podcast. So Mikey G puts in the chat, he says he's definitely, excuse me, he says he's definitely one of the top fans. I think he's got competition with Juju and Nin. So, yeah, Mikey, good morning. We appreciate it. Amazing Ant, good morning. Stephen S., Hassan, many others. Of course, if we don't mention you, we appreciate everything, you being here. Juju's here already. Speaking of, he must have heard that. His ears must be ringing. So let's jump right into it. I knew Juju would be here, especially. This is just a juicy topic. This is good to go. So, of course, New York City taxpayers won't fund the defense of two former Adams allies in regards to sexual misconduct lawsuits. So this is interesting to me, right? There's so much behind this. To me, this is about politics. This is about political loyalty. This is about the leadership culture within the NYPD. There's so many facets to discuss here, so many flashpoints. The first thing I want to discuss is what is so interesting about this case? And what's the big thing that has changed? And to me, what's striking right away is the mayor. Because why now? What has changed? These cases were supposed to be flipped and funded by the taxpayer before. These were sexual misconduct cases. Timothy Pearson, who is his picture's not here. Of course, it's Jeffrey Maddrey, and we could all assume why, right? Because the media loves sexy, and it's a sexy story. So, of course, when we talk about Timothy Pearson, I think he had about 4 to 6 different cases, and they were all being funded by the taxpayer. He was being indemnified for sexual misconduct cases. So the only thing that has changed is the mayor. And it should tell you how much political influence the mayor actually has in a city like New York City, in the nomenclature and the political apparatus of New York City. So what are your thoughts about that? Marlon, do you think that Mayor Eric Adams had a role in this, or is it just happenstance? I don't believe in coincidence. I say that all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think he does have a hand in it, but I also think the City Council Speaker, Julie Menin, also has a hand in it, and I'll explain as we go through why I think that's the case. But I see this as kind of like the chickens coming home to roost, and we kind of warned these guys when it was happening that the city is in a budget crunch. And for those of you who are watching us and wonder why on a police podcast we talk about the budget so much, and you're seeing it in real time right now, why exactly we did, because at some point the chickens were going to come home to roost, because the city is facing a budget crunch, right? And so the optics of certain things don't look good, and the optics of paying funding of taxpayers funding the legal costs of two, well, at least two, because we know there are other Eric Adams officials who are also involved in other improprieties like Chief Henderson, you know. But it looks inappropriate for taxpayers to be funding their legal defense in light of the budget crunch that's going on. I'll explain as we go further on, but we told you guys, we warned them, you know, the chickens were going to come home the roost, and at some point, city council and the mayor or the next mayor are going to look at all of this stuff in their search for funds to prop up the city's budget.
So to me, as far as the political sphere in New York City, what's striking to me right away, it says our system is broken. The political system in New York City is broken because if it actually makes a difference of who's in political office and their influential impact could make a decision on what the financial apparatus is for that city. For instance, if Eric Adams is the mayor and there's a financial breakdown because his friends, his cronies are getting funded by the taxpayer for their alleged misconduct cases, to me, that means the system is broken. And that's why, I read Steve Jobs' book, and I'm a firm believer that the system is more important than the people. Not that the people aren't important, but we have to have a good system in place so that if we don't get the right people, things don't fall apart. I mean, it's nice to see that, and I do agree with you. I do believe that Julie Menon, and I believe that the fact that Eric Adams is no longer in office is what is the big change here. That's why there's a 180 change as far as these alleged misconduct cases. So really the question comes down to this. Should the taxpayer hold the burden for all cases for law enforcement, right? I mean, it's a big jump from should we have qualified immunity or not? But when we talk about indemnification, should the taxpayer fund all cases, or should there be a dichotomy that it has to be in the scope of your employment, right? Because these are alleged misconduct cases. And I always say I'm a firm believer that they're almost impossible to prove or disprove. So if we're talking about misconduct cases, which is not the scope of your duties, should the taxpayer fund it because they were law enforcement professionals, or should it be separate? Because if you're in a position of leadership, unfortunately, if you're in a position, if you hold that position, most of the upper echelon of the NYPD are in those positions, but they don't actually hold leadership. But for Jeffrey Maddrey and Timothy Pearson, should the city the taxpayer fund those lawsuits because they were law enforcement? Or should there be, listen, if it's unfortunate you have an alleged misconduct case, you're on your own. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Without going into the law yet, and we'll touch that, guys. I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all, because when you have cops who are getting sued for making a mistake on the job, we're talking in terms of like CCRB. When we have cops getting sued there and having to pay out of their own pocket, then there's no reason. There's absolutely no reason.
Happened to me, brother.
Mm-hmm. There you go. There's no reason why the taxpayers should be paying for guys who are getting involved in sexual improprieties when we all know that is definitely not in the scope of your duties. Okay. So I think the answer is absolutely no way the taxpayer should be covering that.
I gotta laugh at this. Good morning, Mikey G. Yo, we love you, brother. He says, "Hey, Eric, I'm not a hater of the podcast. Don't put me in the same category as Juju." No way, brother. No way. But I think it's just kind of funny. But Mikey G, we love you, brother. Thank you for being here, as always. Yeah, listen. The bottom line is that's why I've said the NYPD has failed when it comes to alleged misconduct cases. There is nothing in place, at least not that I know of, unless there's something they've changed it. But when I was on the job, I retired 3.5 years ago, there was nothing in place to protect potential victims, but there was also nothing in place to protect anyone from frivolous allegations. There's nothing in place so that people aren't put in those situations. And that's why I think they're impossible to prove or disprove. And the bottom line is these are alleged misconduct cases. We all know the appearance of impropriety there, and we all know the preponderance of evidence has already been met. But at the same token, if you're in a position of leadership it's very easy to be in a position where you can get an alleged misconduct case, where you can get a alleged sexual misconduct case, and the flip side to that is when you're in a position of leadership, that power could also be used for sexual misconduct. I don't think that the taxpayer should have to flip the burden for that. Not at all. Not at all. Listen, could there be something in place as far as the unions, that they have some type of bucket, some funding for something like that? Yes, I think that should fall. The union should step in for something like that if they want to serve their members. Obviously, we're talking about Timothy Pearson and Jeffrey Maddrey, who are no longer part of the unions. I mean, if they want to have their own coalition, but I don't think that the taxpayer should have to flip the burden. And that's a great point. I had a substantiated civilian complaint, and that's why the cops have to understand this. If you're active right now, if you have which is why you have to take those cases to administrative trial. You have no choice. I often, excuse me, I often hear from the cops, and we know it. They settle cases, they take the penalty because they want to get promoted. They want to put things behind them because they want to move on with their career, and I get it. I get it, because when you get a substantiated civilian complaint and you get charges, these things can hold up your career. So you're put in a position where it's most of the cops do. I just take the hit because you want to move on, and I get it. But you need to take these things to administrative trial because it's your only chance to try to fight it. Because if you're substantiated, you're found guilty, the civil liability is on the cop. But yet, and we see cases like this because Eric Adams was in office taking care of his cronies, where the taxpayer was flipping the burden. I have an issue with that.
Yeah. And we should all have an issue with that, you know? So just before we go on, just a little housekeeping. So this article comes from us by way of the Gothamist, and put a link in the chat. If you guys are, I know you probably can't see us if you're watching us on Facebook, but it seems like we've gone down on Facebook. So, you know, we're asking you to come over to YouTube, because again, the best engagement is in the YouTube chat right now. Yeah. But anyway, this article comes by way of the Gothamist, and further details are exactly that the corporate counsel has declined to represent Jeffrey Maddrey, Chief Maddrey, and Timothy Pearson. Okay, so the article link is there, and the article now specifically cites a February 4th confirmation hearing where the head of corporate counsel, Stephen Banks, was questioned by Julie Benin, who is the new city council speaker. And in that questioning, she asked about the legal defense of these former Adams officials, and whether it falls within the scope of the law. And that specific law is is General Municipal Law 50K. Okay, so that's what Eric is referring to right now. And let me go back to the article. So she inquired about that, and it seems that it's that inquiry has stuck in the heads of corporate counsel, at least, or probably other members of Mamdani administration too. And I'll talk about those other members shortly. But this is the statement from City Council. It says, based on my review of new evidence since the original decisions made, I've determined that Pearson is not entitled to representation by the city in these matters. Now, my thing is, what new evidence did he discover? Because we talked about this many times before, and we talked about how it doesn't fall within the scope of the General Municipal Law 50K. So he didn't even need new evidence to really come to this conclusion. Really, all you had to do is look at the facts. Okay, all right, and look at the allegations involved in here. And for those of you who are unaware, let me get you up to speed on those allegations as well. So, as you recall, Jeffrey Maddrey used to be the chief of department in the NYPD. Yes, Detective Nolan, that's his statement. He says new evidence, but the question is, what new evidence? Because you don't need new evidence. You just look at the facts as they were. So anyway, Jeffrey Maddrey, who was the chief of department in NYPD, and for you civilians, chief of department is the highest uniform person, the highest uniform rank in the NYPD. So Jeffrey Maddrey was chief of department, and we all know that the cash for ass program that he was he was the head administrator for, and we all know what he was involved with Lieutenant Epps, and the fact that Jeffrey Maddrey was also roped into the Gabrielle Walls, the Captain Walls lawsuit as well, again involving sexual improprieties, and Chief Henderson is also part of that as well. Now, as it pertains to Tim Pearson, like Eric said, is involved in multiple lawsuits. Okay, multiple lawsuits, and there are multiple allegations of sexual harassment coming from him. And those involved Lieutenant Ludman. And they were basically confirmed by I think this is Chief Mara. Yeah, he basically confirmed it, And again, Tim Pearson is also involved in Captain Wall's lawsuit, okay, for making for sexual harassment against Captain Walls herself. So these guys are involved in multiple sexual harassment lawsuits. And just to go back to the General Law 50K. Yeah, General Law 50K it basically states that the city will provide representation for you if the allegations are alleged to have happened within the scope of your public employment and the discharge of your duties. And as we all know that sexual improprieties and sexual harassment does not fall within those guidelines. Okay, so when corporate counsel says that they found new evidence, my question is, what new evidence? You don't need new evidence. Again, it's right there.
I call bullshit right here.
Yeah,
right.
Sounds like he was trying to find a politically convenient reason to drop them.
I love this chat, by the way. Off the hook. And Franco, my man, I love it. He says, it should have read, due to the Finest Unfiltered reporting, we determined we can't defend his ass. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what? And Franco, thank you, brother. That's hilarious. What I'm saying is, it's total bullshit. Nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is Eric Adams is no longer the mayor. That's the only thing that's changed. What new evidence do you have? I mean, how many lawsuits does someone have to have till you say, wait a minute, this guy's got about 5 lawsuits. This guy, none of them are related to the scope of duties. He's costing the taxpayer thousands of dollars, and we know the city, most of the cases, just settles. This guy is a huge tax burden to the taxpayer in New York City. This is insane. Because, first of all, and you said it, Marlon, it just shows there is a tiered system in everything when it comes to the NYPD. I had to face civil liability burden for a substantiated civilian complaint that I was found guilty. And I took it to administrative trial and got a reduced penalty. So basically, if you think about it, I actually won. But still, the civil liability was out of my pocket, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But we're talking about alleged sexual misconduct has no relation to your scope of duties. And I even had another case where we apprehended, excuse me, where we apprehended, when I say we, that's myself, my special operations teams at PSA 7, we apprehended a perpetrator, and there was a huge brawl that happened in the forest houses, and I was told by corporation counsel that I would not be indemnified, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. There was a huge brawl. Cops were calling for help. I get to the scene. I have some yo-yo that squares up with me, and I front kicked him to the chest. And he went down. We put him in handcuffs. And I was told that I would not get indemnified, that they never seen that before. So first of all, the police academy, Marlon, if you remember, what do you do in the police academy? You punch and you kick, right? So eventually, the only thing that helped me, I think, eventually they told me I was indemnified. This particular perpetrator had shot 2 innocent victims well, they were innocent that day. It was rival gangs shot them and both met their demise. And then they dropped the case and they finally indemnified me, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. But these are the scope of your duties. We're talking about sexual misconduct cases. I don't think the taxpayer should have to pay the burden at all. Are they impossible to prove and disprove? Yes, but I think when it comes to Jeffrey Maddrey and Timothy Pearson, I think we have enough appearance of impropriety. The only thing that has changed is Eric Adams. That's it. Eric Adams' ass is out of office. That's a new evidence. Adams is out. Mom Donnie's in. That's the only thing that's changed. What has changed other than that? Timothy Pearson, this guy is just a thorn in everyone's side. He's not. First of all, the guy should have been arrested anyway. The guy should have been arrested for the incident at Rikers. I mean, this guy had so much power under Eric Adams. You know, where do you think we got the name Crumbs from? Thank you, Timothy Pearson. Mom, what are your thoughts on? I mean, this guy shouldn't be indemnified for any case.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't have even been brought into the administration because there's a cloud of scandal around Pearson, you know, and it's like Banks too. You know, why would you bring back Banks? You know, when that guy was you know, days away from being collared by the feds too. Yeah, I you know, it just shows you the character that Eric Adams has, you know. And look at Eric Adams too. You know, keep in mind he was involved in that crypto coin rug pull that happened months ago, where he, you know, a day before he was in Times Square advertising his coin, and then a day later, after, you know, people poured money into the coin, he rug pulls them, you know, and sells well, it's we don't know who sold their bag, but somebody with a large portion of it, more than likely connected to the coin, sold a massive bag of the coin, which tanked it. So this is a guy who again was involved in scandal and you know, improprieties for decades. Okay, and we've talked about it on the show how Eric Adams was involved with the bribery scandal that ended the careers of a couple politicians in state assembly, and he just happened to be one of those snakes that kind of, you know, slithered his way out, you know, whereas the other guys had to either they got collared or, you know, the scandal kind of ended their political ambitions. But that just goes to show Eric Adams' character, you know. And again, these are all improprieties that people in the department and people in the city government should have said, whoa, you know, what are you doing? You know, we need to get rid of this guy. People in Eric Adams' administration themselves should have been like, this guy is bringing too much smoke, you know, towards us. We need to jettison him the minute these scandals first started popping up. But no, they ignored it, and they thought. I keep saying that I think they thought that Eric Adams was going to get a second win and that he was going to do 8 years there because, you know, even de Blasio got to do 8 years. And one thing I think they didn't plan on was that we would be here. You know, not to toot our own horns, but they didn't realize that we would be here and that this platform would that this network would be a platform for people who wanted to speak out, for whistleblowers, and for people who wanted to call the city to the mat in lawsuits. And what happened? If you look back on it, we talked about it, the scandals, and when Sal was on this network, there was a lot of their lawyers came on the network too, and kind of broke down the legal arguments for all of us and told us what exactly was happening in the department. And I think without this network, a lot of the reporters who watch us would have never ran with those stories because you know, a lot of times those stories first leaked from this network. So it gave them you know, a little it gave them bait to go after, you know. And I just don't think that these people like Pearson and Maddrey anticipated that we would be here. But like I always say, I mean, they created us, you know. So,
you know what? Spot on, brother. Because I often say it. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So when John Scola was on Sal's show, he laid it out best, man. I was like, wow, this guy laid it out good. I have to be honest, before John Scola was on the network, I had spoke to him one time, and I heard some negative things about him, and I said, I'm not too impressed by this guy. But when he came on, I said, whoa, wait a minute. This guy knows the NYPD. He really understands the culture, and he understands what's going on. What did he say? He said that the NYPD doesn't try to come to any resolutions and solve the problems at the root of the issues at the upper echelon. What they do is they just pay out lawsuits, and they just settlement after settlement so that they can continue to have the amenities, excuse me, so that they can continue to have the amenities that they have. So they just pay out lawsuits because it's pretty damn sweet at the top. And I said, wow, this guy laid it out pretty good. I mean, he was spot on. And so ultimately, I think the problem, though, is how everyone else gets affected by it. And when I say everyone else, I mean the general population, right? Because if you're tier one, you're at the upper echelon of the police department. For the most part, until now, Jeffrey Maddrey and Timothy Pearson, in this case, you're pretty damn well protected. And if you're tier two, you got ties by nepotism, cronyism. But if you're general population, if you're some poor, lonely cop and you get a sexual misconduct case, well, guess what? You're on your own. If you're Eric Dim and you get a substantiated civilian complaint for doing your job, you're on your own. So this time, the tides have turned. Now, Rob Lukesh, I love you, brother. He makes a great point. This is my point. I feel these cases are almost impossible to prove or disprove. Unless you have hard evidence, maybe by a text message, or maybe if a potential victim sets up their predator with a recording. Unless you have that, it's really tough to prove or disprove these cases. But that's why I said, if anyone, I've really thought about this. What could the NYPD have in place to protect potential victims? But even more than that, to prevent frivolous allegations? How does the NYPD, what could they come up with to protect someone from having a frivolous allegation? Now, when it comes to Jeffrey Maddrey and Timothy Pearson, I mean, I think the preponderance of evidence is there. I think it looks like it doesn't look too good for their side. But Rob Lukesh, I love you, brother, makes a great point. He says, don't get me wrong. I think Maddrey and Pearson are both predators. But the burden of proof is on the accuser and the prosecutor. Not to cover the accused will open Pandora's box to frivolous allegations. Yes, I agree. That's the problem here, and that's where the NYPD fails. And that's why John Scola is right. Well, they're not trying to come up with any solutions to prevent the next lawsuit. Why? Because it's pretty damn good at the top. If you're Jeffrey Maddrey and you're licking your fingers and you're licking your chops because it's pretty damn good and you can give out all the overtime you want, and, you can have as many girlfriends as you want, and they're going to pay for your trips. Well, who wants to try to come up with a problem to get rid of these things? Just pay the damn lawsuit when it comes. And that's why you're right, Marlon. They never anticipated we'd be in this position. They were laughing, all those guys at the Finest Unfiltered. They're going to go away. No, we're just growing. And yes, you created this. And it's not about Marlon or me and John that, hey, we're going to get back at you. We want a better police department for the cops that are there now. You know what? For me, my life's over within the NYPD. Same thing for Marlon, same thing with John. We moved on. But I don't want people to have the same experience I had. I don't want real cops that are out there, like Officer Grant Polgarin, who should be promoted already. I don't know why he hasn't been promoted already. He should be detective, who has about 40-something civilian complaints because he's out there being a cop. But the reality is, if he gets a substantiated complaint and there's civil liability attached, it's Officer Grant Polgarin that's going to be paying it, just as I did. So, of course, in cases like this, it should be Jeffrey Maddrey and Timothy Pearson flipping the bill, not the taxpayer. So, Rob, I think that's a great point. Like, Marlon, what do you think the NYPD? I thought about this quite often, and I mentioned on numerous episodes. What do you think the NYPD could put in place to have preventable measures to protect someone for potential frivolous allegations?
Well, in terms of which type of frivolous allegations, because if we're looking at sexual harassment and sexual improprieties, I think there's already provisions in place. Well, one of the things the department should be doing is holding executives' feet to the fire. Stop, getting involved with your subordinates. Okay, it's a problem. Stop doing it. If you want to get involved with your subordinates, somebody got to get transferred. It's as simple as that. Um, if they kept, the thing is, if executives keep getting involved with subordinates, you're opening the door to possible allegations, be it legit or frivolous. You are. And to give him credit, when Eric Sanders was on this network, and he explained how there's no consent in when there's a supervisor subordinate relationship. I mean, I thought he was spot on back then. I mean, we all think he kind of went over the deep end with this whole run thing and the whole racializing of all these problems in the department now. But when he was on this network and he was explaining about Epps' situation, he was spot on. And again, there's no consent in supervisor subordinate relationships. So stop getting involved with your subordinates. Somebody gets if you want to get involved with your driver is going to have to get transferred to another precinct. It's as simple as that. Okay. And here's what I think. I hope people are watching this and paying attention to this, because Chief Lukash is right in that a Pandora's box has been opened, but it's not necessarily by that, but by this, that the Pandora's box is open. I think Pandora's box has already been opened by the Gender Motivated Violence Act. Okay. Which, as it states, it provides a legal pathway for survivors of gender-based violence to seek civil accountability. And the window goes back to the early 2000s, I believe. So this is the Pandora's box that's already been opened. Okay, what's happening now with the new city council speaker is that in January, the city council overrided Eric Adams' veto. Okay. And so what this also did was create a new 18-month look back window, which extends back to, again, a couple years back to 2022, I believe. So this already opens up a Pandora's box. Okay. And I think more, in fact, when I was researching this, it says that the city council and NYC government are already anticipating an additional surge of with just because of the override. So I think the Pandora's box is already opened up. What I think is happening now, though, with this, is a precedent has been set to not represent you if you're involved in sexual harassment allegations. Okay, so again, why I say I hope people are paying attention to this, because if you're involved with your subordinate, you've already opened up that window, right? And now the precedent is set where the city is not going to represent you.
I think it's a fantastic point, and what we have to look at is the political influence on corporation counsel in New York City, and I think that's really where the problem also is, because corporation counsel should be a neutral body that is not politically challenged, right? Because Eric Adams had sexual misconduct cases where he was indemnified, and sexual misconduct cases based on what we're saying. And I agree, you agree, and I believe our friends and listeners are very sensible. Also, we agree that sexual misconduct cases are not part of the scope of employment at all. It's not part of the scope of duties. It's unfortunate. You may be in a position where it's a frivolous allegation, but unfortunately, the burden is going to be on you on how you walk that case. And if you do win, well, then you could get you should be able to have your fees taken care of. And I think that's something that should be discussed with the unions. I think this is completely separate. I think indemnification, the qualified immunity is very important, but for the scope of your employment, where sexual misconduct cases are completely separate. Yes, and we need to change the culture of the NYPD, especially at the upper echelon, to protect the NYPD, to protect the fiscal budget in New York City, and ultimately to protect the taxpayer. Should the taxpayer have a burden for lawsuits when it comes to law enforcement? I believe yes, right? Because you're a taxpayer, you're paying taxes for roads to be fixed. Part of paying taxes is your public safety apparatus. But we're talking about when it comes to scope of employment. For sexual misconduct cases, a complete dichotomy there. But Eric Adams, his cases were indemnified. He was protected. He didn't have to flip the bill. So it shows, again, that I think the Corporation Council is really where I have an issue, that the Corporation Council is not apolitical, and that it can be swayed and moved depending on who's in office. Because going back to what you said, and I dissected the information myself as well, I could not find anything that they've shown that has come to light. Because what is that new evidence? If in fact you said there's new evidence, why was that new evidence not presented publicly? Why is that not transparent? There is no new evidence. What new evidence is there? And what was in place before that? What was in place before that there was indemnification? Why were they being? That is the ultimate question. Why were they being represented in the first place for a sexual misconduct case? And what evidence has changed now? And I think the whole point of this is that in any sexual misconduct case, it doesn't fall within your scope of duties. So I think that's what's important, Marlon. What was in place before and what evidence has changed? Yeah, Hunter. John picked his vacation week this week. I guess he thinks it's an A pick. Anyway, what do you? I mean, honestly, and I just think that I think you make some great points. I think there really has to be something put in place for preventable measures. That's a great start. Obviously, the fraternization, but there has to be other things also. And I think they need to move forward with that.
Well, I mean, I think they just need to get rid of white shirt immunity when it comes to that. Just hold people's feet to the fire. Just let guys know if you're involved with your subordinate, you're not getting promoted. I mean, the thing is, if you're part of the blue shirt peasant class and you're involved in sexual, if you're a sergeant, right? Again, you're still part of the blue class, peasantry class. There, sergeants, you still wear that blue shirt, okay? So if you're involved with your subordinate and allegations are made, you're getting in trouble. If you're not getting jammed up, you're certainly getting transferred or you're getting highway therapy. But that's not the case when you look at if you have white shirt immunity. So I just think it's as simple as holding people's feet to the fire and like saying that, okay, if you're involved with your subordinate, you're not getting promoted. Because again, the Pandora's box has already been opened and the department, this embarrasses the department. Okay. Whether the allegations are true or not, what happens is the media runs with salacious headlines and then it stays in the heads of the public because the media never corrects if eventually you're proven innocent, the media never goes back and corrects it. Okay. Because that doesn't generate headlines. So that salacious headline stays in the head of the public, and the public is most of the public are low information people. Okay, they're not going to dig further into the story. They hear the salacious headline, and that's what's going to stay in their heads forever. Okay, so the thing is, the department doesn't need the smoke. Okay, and by you getting involved with your subordinate, you're bringing that smoke to the department, whether those allegations are legit or not. And it's just a matter of holding guys' feet to the fire and reminding them that does not fall within the scope of your employment. And just to go back to General Law 50K, okay, pay attention to the key provisions, guys. Okay, the scope requirement, we know that acting within the scope of your public employment and the discharge of your duties, but also the compliance requirement. Okay, the employee must not have violated any agency rules or regulations at the time of the act. And again, right, you are breaking department guidelines. Okay, so the rules are already in place. Okay, it's just a matter of the department if they're actually going to follow through with the rules, or if white shirt immunity is going to still be applied to. And for those of you who aren't aware of white shirt immunity, it basically means the tiered system that Eric talks about. But when you put the tiered system in terms of rank, okay, so once you get that white shirt, things become a little easier for you, let's say.
So I think it's important that people understand. Like, I think sometimes there's confusion on what is indemnification, right? Indemnification, excuse me, doesn't mean that the person, the accused, is found guilty or not, right? What indemnification means is that there will be no loss or burden on the accused because of the position that they hold and the job that they're performing. So, as a law enforcement professional, right, the reason for indemnification is because the position that you're in, right, is that you're in a it's local government, but you're in a position of government where you're taking action serving the people, and that you're easily tangible, where people can make lawsuits against you, right? This is the most litigious nation in the entire world, especially, and this is the most litigious city in the entire country. Mm-hmm. So you need those protections, which indemnification protects you from loss. Because if cops, and that's why it's so important, we have to continue to fight qualified immunity indemnification. If cops are not indemnified, they cannot do their job to the best of their ability. And that's the entire point of indemnification, to protect them so that they could do their job. But when we talk about sexual misconduct cases, ultimately, if you break it down, it sounds kind of funny. What are we protecting a cop from, right? You're not doing your job, right? That's something completely separate. If you're having some type of relation or not, an allegation is made against you, unfortunately, that burden falls on you. And that's why I said the unions should come up with something with their members to protect them and say, okay, if you are especially if you're in a position of leadership and you get a sexual misconduct case, the union will step in and have the lawyers. And for the most part, listen, I beat up the unions all the time, but I will say the unions at this point, they do step in if you are in a position where you're not indemnified. So for they do step in right now. And that's why it's a great point Rob Lukash makes, my brother. I love it. If we get to the point that there's so many frivolous allegations, well, then the unions won't be able to represent you anymore, because it's just going to become too costly and too expensive. But I think, and you mentioned it earlier, let's talk about the budget. And people say, oh, why do you talk about the budget on the show? I've actually had people text me too, like, why are you guys so concerned with the budget? I'm like, why are you not concerned? You should want to protect your pension. If you're active or retired, the ultimate goal and the mission is to get that pension. And all these factors could potentially affect your pension. All these scams for 3/4 disabilities, all these scams with medical, all these scams with these sexual misconduct allegations are just another fabric that's torn away that could lead to an issue with your pension. So we should all care. The budget in New York City is very important. Let's jump into that, Marlon.
Oh yeah, it's very important, and we'll definitely get into that, and I'll show you why I think that's playing a very important part of this. Okay, because not only did Mamdani say that he's going to have basically auditors, right, embedded in each agency to look at where they can make certain cuts. Remember, according to Mamdani, we're facing a 5 point. According to him, we've gotten down the budget gap of 12 billion for the forthcoming year to 5.3. I mean, the comptroller Levine is stating that it's not, that it's actually 7.3. But the point I'm trying to make here is that he's looking to make cuts in each agency, and he's putting in people there who are going to be looking mm, to make cuts here and there. And I have no doubt that that's playing a part in it. And not just that, but we have a budget hearing that's coming up, and I'll talk about that the next go round. But I think that's weighing heavily on the mind of Mamdani's administration, and I think this is, in a lot of ways, this might be also an offering to Speaker Minin, to because they want to be on her good side, you know, especially as that budget hearing with OMB is coming up. But to those who say that, why are we talking about a budget? It's because if you look at, I have this theory that if you follow the money, I mean, it's not my theory, but you follow the money and you can see certain behaviors and you can see certain patterns and you could almost predict what's going to happen. And if you follow the money months ago, you would have known that the city was facing, in fact, years ago, because Eric Adams himself mentioned it a couple times. And Eric Adams himself was obsessed also with the city's bond rating. And what have we seen lately? Well, you have two ratings agencies who are looking to downgrade the city's bond rating. Okay, and that's because the budget situation and the budget gaps are coming to a head. And we talked about this a while ago, because if you follow that, you know that this situation that we're in right now, where the city doesn't want to represent Maddrey and Pearson, was going to happen. And it was going to happen because, again, that budget gap isn't going to fill itself. Okay. And if you're paying for, remember, the left has spent well over 10 years now, right? Well over 10 years denigrating cops, right? And making cops the enemy of the people, right? They put all of the problems of government onto the police department, okay? Because the police department is an easy scapegoat, okay? Easy scapegoat. So they've spent more than 10 years doing that now, right? And think of it, in the middle of a budget crunch where city councils are going to have to, well, and government in general is going to have to make cuts to a lot of their boondoggle progressive programs, right? And social welfare programs. And in the face of that, you're representing cops who are involved in sexual harassment allegations, okay? And how does that look to the Democrat voting base? That looks terrible, okay? None of these Democrats want that, okay? So they're going to throw you out to the wolves, because it's, again, they spend more than 10 years making you the enemy of the public. It's easy for them to put you out there to the wolves, rather than explain to the same public that they're going to be cutting their welfare, that yeah, we got to represent you. So again, if you follow the money, and you were doing it months ago and years ago, you could have seen that this is coming, because when faced with a choice, they're going to screw you, the cops. And this is why, again, we talk about a pension. I see here Kenneth Flores talking about the 2030 pension convention. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind, Kenneth, as we head there, because, again, they're going to sacrifice. They'd rather sacrifice cops than sacrifice their stupid social welfare programs that are really about grift and graft to their cronies in these NGOs and community organizations. Okay, so something to keep in mind.
Listen, I've been blowing the horn on this for a long time, and many cops think that their pension is just impervious, and that's not true. I mean, you look at cities like Detroit, look at cities like Baltimore, you look at cities like Chicago. I think Chicago is the best example. And you see the attack on pensions. I mean, and let's be honest, in law enforcement in New York City and New York State, you really don't have many friends. So who you think the politicians go, wait a minute, we got a budget crisis going on. We got to make sure we protect these pensions. That's the last thing they care about. And pensions, don't worry about those guys. I mean, and how do we know that? Does anybody remember the COVID vaccine mandate? Yeah, those guys. Remember that? Yeah, exactly. It's no difference. So your pensions obviously in New York City, and you look at New York State, are much stronger than some of these other cities that had major issues like Detroit and Chicago. However, they're not completely impervious. So we can get to that point. And if you look at the history of it, and you look at the nomenclature of the pension in New York City and New York State, it's on a slippery slope. It's slippery slope, but it's always walking a fine tightrope, especially the New York City Police Pension Fund, where it's its own pension fund funded by itself. And in some cases, that makes it stronger, but in some cases, that does make it weaker and more attractable to actually target. So you have to look at that. You should be paying attention to that. But before we go back to the budget, I just want to say there was a great comment here, and I agree. This is one of the things that could be done to start to prevent potential frivolous allegations, but to protect potential victims also. And it's formerly known as gang. I don't see the comment's not up right now, but formerly known as gang says, make the executives wear body cameras. Yes. And you might say, why? How does that change things? Well, what it does change is it starts to put the job on a level playing field. You know, I was talking about the Marine Corps, and I would think it was so special about the Marine Corps is that from private to general, everyone pretty much wears the same uniform. And there are some nuances, some differences, but ultimately, on a general whole, it's the same uniform. And I can tell you this, if you called a general a Marine, they'd be just as proud as if you called a private a Marine. And it's far different ideology in the NYPD. How many times, and I hate this, how many times do we have chiefs say, well, I'm not a cop, I'm a chief? Really? To me, it should be an honor if you're a chief and someone says you're a good cop. We should all be considered cops. You're a cop that leads other cops. You're not a chief. You're not running a tribe. I'm sorry. You're a cop that leads other cop. That's just a rank. It's just a title. But unfortunately, it goes to their head. But why is that important? It's important because there's a three-tiered system in the NYPD I often talk about. And if we get the right leadership in place and we can eradicate that tiered system, it would make a difference. Why? Because if you are a rising star in the NYPD and you're an active chief and you're totally professional, if you get accused of a frivolous allegation like sexual misconduct cases, until now, it's in my opinion, and John Scola said it, the NYPD and Corporation Counsel would just have the taxpayer pay it and not do a full-out investigation and find the wrongdoing on the part of the potential frivolous allegation. Why? Because there's so many other chiefs who thought because they got promoted, they got better looking, and now they're Don Juan, and they got all these girls, and they don't want to dive into it because their case doesn't look too good, so they just pay it. You pay it, and it goes away. So that's one of the things we need to look at. And so, yes, body cameras would change because now we're putting people on a level playing field. So for the majority of the work that they're doing, they would be on camera. They're held to the same. They would be held to the same standard. I don't see why does some police officer have to do their job and almost the entire day, other than going to the bathroom, they're on body camera, but some chief is not tagged with a body camera. Why? What difference is there other than rank? To me, that's the ideology. Should be you're a cop leading other cops. I hate when people say, "Oh, well, I'm going to make sergeant. I don't want to be a cop anymore." Really? What are you going to be? You're going to be a baker? You're going to be a realtor? As far as I'm concerned, you're a cop that leads other cops. And if you think any way different, you shouldn't be on that job.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes to Stephen S.'s comment here. It says they don't care about you, and enemies of the party line are dehumanized and discarded. I think that's one of the biggest problems here. They don't value cops.
That's a great comment, by the way. That is spot on.
Yeah. I think they don't value cops. They don't value humans. Okay. Because what have we seen going on in this department? They're obsessed with like robots and drones. Most certainly the Eric Adams administration was. And you remember when they were introducing the subway bot that it was an operation for like a week until they threw it back in a transit closet somewhere. But if you recall, during that press conference, Eric Adams was saying about the robot how great it was, that it doesn't need to take lunch breaks, it doesn't need to take bathroom breaks, and it does its job for $9 an hour. So that's what he thinks of you, the cop. Okay, that's how little he thinks of you. Okay, and that's what the biggest problem here. And by the way, I don't think it's just Eric Adams. I think the entire Western world, what you're seeing is a view from the elites. Okay, they don't value the humans. They don't value human workers. That's why they're busy trying to replace you with AI, right? They think AI can do it all, and because it can do it cheaper, we don't need you anymore. Okay,
That's right.
and I think the West is on its way to faffling about that, because again, you can't build the server. The server doesn't build itself. The robot doesn't build itself. Okay, the energy infrastructure doesn't build itself. You need humans. You need masculine men who are going to climb up those poles and continue running those power lines to the server. Okay, you need men who are going to fix the roads, right? So that you could build a AI data center in the middle of West Bubblefuck. Okay, the robots ain't gonna do it yet. And one of the things you're seeing with the West is that we have a shortage of trade skills that are necessary for that, right? And where's that gonna come from? It ain't coming overnight. Okay, so same thing with law enforcement, right? The robots ain't here yet. Robots ain't coming unless you have that infrastructure, those power lines, the better roads, the better, energy distribution system. None of that is here yet. So the robot policemen, they ain't coming. You're still gonna need the humans. And this job hasn't figured out yet that you're still gonna need humans that are great at their job. Okay. But they still think that, okay, the drone is gonna come over. It's not gonna work like that. And they're gonna FAFO, and we're on the cusp of finding out, because any day now that AI bubble is gonna explode, because everybody is seeing that it's just a Ponzi scheme right now, and it's propping up the markets, right? But again, the reason why you're seeing these inequities is because the job does not value the cops on the street. They think you're replaceable. You're just a number. We get rid of you. We'll get some warm body to fill the academy seats, and they'll wait to be given instructions from One Police Plaza and from a supervisor.
I'm laughing because I listen to every word. I love to pay attention to detail. I'm pretty sure you said they're gonna FAFO. Is that what you said? Fuck around, find out.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I never heard someone use FAFO as part of their sentence. Marlon is so eloquent and in putting stuff together that he even put FAFO in the sentence. That's hilarious. I'm like, wait, did he just say FAFO? I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's fuck around, find out. I love it, brother. Samantha Giacone, I just want to go back. What she says here is spot on. And this goes back to the tiered system that's in the NYPD. And Samantha, I mean, you nailed it right here. And she says, I've seen sexual harassment cases disappear because of who they knew. Shocker right there. All right, who knows Eric Adams? Jeffrey, Maddrey, Timothy Pearson. Until now, I'm sure they're trying to make phone calls. Hey, Zoran, can you help us out here? I'm sure they're calling Rodney, their buddy Rodney right now, who's in tight with Zoran, right? Hey, Rodney Harrison, can you help us out here, brother? So, she says who they knew, complaints were filed. Also seen bosses take a guilty plea for fake discrimination because the unions told them it's faster and better. It's funny you put that comment because that's what I was alluding to, right? There are people that are rising stars who are very professional, but are put in positions where the job and the corporation counsel is going to settle it. They're going to settle it, and they may be guilty of nothing because there are a couple of people out there, they're playing, they're having a good time. And it's not just sexual misconduct cases, right? Let's be honest. This whole Epstein is not just about, it's not about sex, maybe a little bit. But to me, that's more about, man, it's power. You're at the top. You can do whatever you want. You can get the girls you want. You can give out the overtime, right? You can do whatever you want. It just shows how much power and the separation. And that's what I think is so important to look at is the separation, the dichotomy, the tiered system of what was life like for Jeffrey Maddrey in the NYPD in comparison to some cop that's walking a beat. I mean, if some cop was walking a beat, did just a quarter of the things Jeffrey Maddrey was alleged of, they'd be in jail right now. I mean, Jeffrey Maddrey, if anybody, and he happens to be like the quintessential person for us to talk about in this case, right? Because Jeffrey Maddrey has had so many accusations and allegations, not just sexual misconduct, other things, appearances, impropriety. And he has, like, I always said, this guy has 9 lives, right? Because he's part of that tier 1 system. And so, Samantha, you nailed it. You nailed it. There are active chiefs or rising stars or people that are low in the totem pole, maybe a sergeants or lieutenants, who are very professional and get allegations, not just sexual misconduct cases, but other types of allegations. And those cases get settled. And because John Scola nailed it. John Scola nailed it. They just keep paying and paying so that the big boys at the top can play their games and play with their little toys. I mean, look at John Shell. Who held him responsible for being so unprofessional on social media? No one. We saw that DOI report, right, from the Department of Investigations. That was useless. You could have wiped your ass with that one. So, Samantha, spot on. Spot on. And Marlon, fatfo, brother. Fuck around and find out.
Yeah. Well, to that, Samantha, let's go back to the Gender Motivated Violence Act, right? Let me get this comment off the board. So, okay, so again, we go back to this, right? The question, what I'm wondering about now is, because of this law, again, because the city council overrided this veto, right? I wonder about the other people named in these lawsuits, okay? Because again, the courts have ruled that sexual assault, sexual harassment, and coerced sexual favors, okay? See that last one, coerced sexual favors. What does that sound like? That sounds like cash for ass to me, right? They said they've ruled prior that this does not fall within the scope of your duties, okay? Obviously, right? So when I see that, I have to wonder about all the other people that were involved in these lawsuits, okay? Or are they going to have to get representation themselves? Because again, a lot of these other people were involved in the cover-up, okay? And this is just for Timothy Pearson's long list of improprieties. And you go to Jeffrey Maddrey's, again, there's Scott Henderson. If I was him, I'd be trying to find a good lawyer right now for trying to negotiate a good good decent fees, affordable fees right now, okay? Because he's stepped in it too. And again, these guys, we all know these guys were in a clique, but why didn't one of them, certainly in the case of Jeffrey Maddrey, right? Because Jeffrey Maddrey at one point was a rising star in this department. And when I was in Brooklyn North and he was the borough chief, I thought, man, this guy's going to be commissioner one day, definitely headed up commissioner one day, because the Brooklyn North community loved him, okay? And most cops in Brooklyn North loved him too. Nobody ever said anything bad about Jeffrey Maddrey, but what did we know Jeffrey Maddrey was back then? What he was involved with? He loved the ladies, right? Even before the what happened with Tabitha happened, and it was in the papers, right? Even before that, there was plenty of rumors that Jeffrey Maddrey loved the ladies, right? And what did we see after that? Basically, his career was slowed down, okay? And I think in a lot of ways, it destroyed his chances of ever becoming PC, because there's no way that any mayor was going to make him the PC with what happened with Tabitha Foster on his record. So these guys were in a clique. Why didn't somebody, especially like Cass, why didn't somebody tell Jeff, like, dude, slow down, man. This is gonna ruin your career, Slow down, And because had they been talking amongst each other, they, now they wouldn't all be trying to find lawyers, okay? Because again, I think they all just became cocky, and nobody worried that any of this would ever catch up to them, especially in the case of, when they, when Eric Adams became mayor, and, they basically could do whatever they basically ran the department. So going back to what you said about Rodney Harrison, you have to wonder, right? If this is why, we talked about it months ago, why the Guardians seem to be, there seem to be some rift between the Guardians and Tish and how they want to get rid of Tish. Okay. You have to wonder about that. Why they themselves at that point didn't see this coming too, because once Adams lost, the gig is up, But you have to wonder if they saw this coming too and have been really pushing, or doing their best behind the scenes to try and get rid of Tish, so Rodney Harrison could come in there and kind of slow down this process, or maybe try and influence the mayor in some way.
I will say though, I will say this is a great move by Julie Menon and Corporation Counsel. Now, obviously, timing is so important. I don't believe anything's coincidence. I don't believe anything's happenstance. I say that all the time. I really don't. But I will say at least they made the right move at this point, Julie Menon and Corporation Counsel at this point, because I think that we have to at some point slice into political loyalty, right? Because the political loyalty that we saw with Eric Adams and his cronies and in his circle was a burden for the taxpayer and the entire city, and the city's paying for it right now. And with this administration that we have with Eric Adams, and I don't think Zohran Mamdani is going to be any better, but I'm just saying with this administration, you can see how the taxpayer takes a major hit when we have the wrong people in office and when they put all their friends and their cronies in place. It's nice to see. This should have been in place before, but what it does show, and thank you to the Finest Unfiltered and our friends and listeners, that I think we're actually chipping away. I think it's going to take years, but we're actually chipping away little by little, because there was a time where the upper echelon was never held accountable, right? They just pay. We just pay. So to see this is a big change. And that's why, and that's really ultimately when we say, and I say particularly when I say it myself, what needs to be put in place to prevent potential victims and to prevent frivolous lawsuits is professional leadership. We complete overhaul in leadership. I blame the leadership completely. Because if the leadership was professional, there wouldn't be a 3-tier system. Will there be some form of nepotism and cronyism? There'll always be some form. I'm a realist. I understand that it's never going to be at zero tolerance. There's no organization, even in the corporate world or any form of organization, even if you work at Home Depot, and I say Home Depot because I love Home Depot. I'm on Home Depot every day. I'm sure there's some form of nepotism, cronyism there. It's anywhere. But you have to try to minimize it and curb it and deter it as much as possible. But there's not a level playing field in the NYPD, and that's the problem. Is because people, you even see it early on, Marlon. Just think back in your career, right? Even as rookies, right? There were people that we worked with, and I'm sure, and I say, I without asking you, I know I could say that it wasn't you, and because you're not a part of a deity, and neither was I, right? We're first law enforcement in our families, but I worked with people that were part of a deity, and they knew, my father's in this unit, my father's in that unit. He said, this is what I have to do to get there, right? And the nepotism already started. They already started to plant the seed. And was, for some guys, it was, well, if I get promoted, I don't have to make collars anymore. It starts already, right? If I get promoted to sergeant, I don't have to make arrests. If I get promoted to lieutenant, I can have the pretty girl drive me. If I get promoted to captain, I get to go all the steakhouses. If I get promoted to this. So it's already, the seed is already planted, right? And for some guys, you get promoted, you get better looking, right? So it already had the thing planted ahead of me, and I can get promoted, and I start to get things at my fingertips. Oh, you get promoted, these guys don't have to pay for nothing. So it starts early on. And so we have to change the culture. And it has to be a level playing field. We have to change this idea that you're not a cop anymore. You are a cop that leads other cops. And that means you have to be held to the same standard as the cops that you lead. That's what I think is a key element right there.
Yeah, well, I think the first things first, I think we have to, this is why I go back to talking about collars. The basic job of whether you're a chief, listen, before you get to chief, your basic job is a cop, okay? Your basic job was to catch the bad guys, to arrest the bad guys, right? And we get to a department that values cops when we basically make set standards before you get to the top. You shouldn't be you know so this is Richie Taylor. Okay, we've talked about Chief Taylor before. Okay, right? But the basic job is to arrest bad guys, right? You're there to catch bad guys. If you cannot catch bad guys, it's the equivalent of a guy becoming a financial advisor when he doesn't know basic arithmetic, right? It's your basic job is to arrest people. Okay, so how can you be an effective chief if you were never good at doing the basic job? Okay, the reason part of the re- in my opinion, part of the reason why the department is where it's at is because the people at the top don't have the basic they didn't fill out the basic requirements yet. Okay, and because they get to the top now, they themselves don't value the guy who's on the street, who's bringing in bodies, who's trying to be the best cop he should, and who's out there and who's going to be getting CCRBs and all these nonsense allegations. Okay, they don't respect that. Okay, because they themselves were never there. Now, I'm not saying you have to have 400 college to be a chief or anything like that. No, no. But I'm saying if when I was on patrol, there was a time when I was on patrol. I just got out for impact and I just got transferred to the 7-7, right? And I got put on I went to midnights, but unfortunately, by the way, I went to midnights partly because the cop they partnered with me on the 4x12s sucked, and I was miserable. Okay, miserable. Okay, and I wanted to be an active cop. Okay, so I get to midnights now, and unfortunately, a lot of guys on midnights had like 20 years on, and me being a rookie, I wanted to jump out on people and stop people, and the old timers weren't having it. So the sergeant pulled me in the room, and she goes, Bethel, is there something going on with the squad? What's going on? You're not giving me activity. I go, Sarge, if you want activity, you put me with a 20-year-old guy, a guy with 20 years on. I'm gonna be telling him to jump out on people. Let's go look for something. No, I told her, put me with a guy who has my time on, and we're gonna get busy. And that's the thing. If I showed up with those amount of collars, I would be in the CO's office, or I'd certainly be getting addressed down by the sergeant. What have I been doing? So how is it that guys like him are now chiefs now? Okay, you couldn't do the basic job. You didn't know basic arithmetic, but now you're a financial advisor, and we're supposed to trust your instincts. Okay, so if we get to a point where the guys who are promoted are the guys who are active, who are great at doing the basic job, then that kind of begins the shift of that begins shifting the dynamics and begins putting more respect onto humans and onto cops, okay, and onto cops who are great at their job.
I think that is a fantastic viewpoint and perspective you just put out there, and I agree with that. So, excuse me, man, I've been coughing a lot today. So, I can tell you what, I look at it like this, and I kind of make the analogy. When I was in the Marine Corps, I remember the leadership was very good, but ultimately the leaders that you would put a focus on, that you really looked up to, were the ones that did the same job, right? Were the ones that were in the shit. So, excuse me. So, you often, Hunter says COVID cough, but you often see, in the NYPD, people don't walk around with a sign says, I have this many arrests, or I did this job or that job. But in the Marine Corps, it's a little bit more obvious, right? When you would see someone in uniform, they would have their medals, and each medal represents something that they did or combat experience, right? So you can look at someone's medals. It's different than the NYPD, right? They have medals, but it doesn't really tell a story. You have excellent police duty, meritorious. but you don't really know what they got it for, right? Just kind of bravery. It could be, but unfortunately, some of those medals are kind of watered down. But in the Marine Corps, when someone, or any branch, when they have their medals, we used to call it a salad, right? You can look at it and it tells a story. Like, oh, that guy was in Iraq. That guy's a Vietnam vet. That guy did something extremely brave. And it tells a story. You have an idea of who they are, their background is. You're like, oh, well, that's a guy I want to follow, right? That's a guy who I allow, be in the lead position. And because, to me, they were leaders, but they were still Marines. And so when I look at the NYPD, that's where I always had a problem, is that why would that be an insult? If you're a 4-star chief, why is that an insult if someone says you're a good cop? Oh, I'm not a cop, I'm a chief. And so we lose that uniformity. And I think that's very important. A cop should be proud. Police officers should be proud to be considered a cop, right? It's an honor to be called a cop. But if you're a chief, you should be considered a cop also. And the same thing as a sergeant, lieutenant, you're a cop that leads other cops. And I hate this ideology. Well, I'm going to become a sergeant. I don't have to make calls anymore. So you're going to tell your cops, you're going to lead the same guys. You want them to go out and make arrests, but you don't have to do it. Don't tell people or ask people to do things that you won't do yourself. How do you expect to be influential if you're not willing to do it yourself? And that's part of leadership. And that's where I have a problem. I think that's really where we missed the mark. You should be a cop that leads other cops. You happen to have the rank. And I know Rob Lukash and Ron Layson, that's the way they think, right? Because they wanted to help people. They wanted to lead. They consider themselves cops. And that's the way it should be. You should be a cop that leads other cops. And that's just your billet. Hey, I'm a deputy chief, but I'm a cop that I lead 2,000 cops or 3,000 cops, and I'm a cop just like them. And I think that should be the ideology.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the best leaders were all active cops, I think because they've all been through the grind, they understand, what you're trying to do, especially if you're that guy who's, going out there and getting activity and working. And I think the way they approach leadership is a lot, it's a lot more. I also think it's a lot more personal, because I find that throughout my career, those guys who are active cops and who are not bosses, you can actually talk to them, as opposed to those guys who weren't active cops. They put up this front that, when they've been, I think, brainwashed in BMON, that, I'm the sergeant, I'm the supervisor, you're the peasant, and it's like, you can't talk to them, and again, the best bosses I've had were the bosses who were active cops, because they knew when to be a boss and when to let me run wild. And they knew also when to shut me down. And they would shut me down and explain to me, hey, listen, this, and this. When, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hit that door. And they'd be like, nah, slow down. We're gonna wait on that, And they would explain it to me. And it's a different dynamic, and I think it's a healthier dynamic than the whole I'm the boss front, and again, I just think that the job would be better for it if we head to that world where there's a certain standard of before you become a boss that you need to complete, and again, you don't have to have 400 collars, but you have to show that as a cop you were active and you did the job as best you could. You did a good job, right? And you're well-rounded. By the way, that those are arrests also tell me whether you're kind of like a well-rounded boss too. Okay, because again, the more arrests you have, you tend to see certain behaviors on the street. You tend to learn how to recognize those behaviors, and you learn how to interact with people. And those people could be people that's not part of your community, that you're not familiar with, right? But you know how to interact with them, because when you were a cop on the street and you were active, you were busy and you dealt with all sorts of people, from the business, from the guy who has a store on the block, to the perp himself, who may not like you, right? But you've dealt with him so often that he comes to respect you. Okay. so you know how to approach talking to perps. Okay, and so that all comes with the experience of being an active cop. So having a lot of arrests tells me that you're a well-rounded, you're more than likely, right? A more well-rounded leader when you get to that rank. So
Samantha, how you doing? I appreciate Samantha's got some great input today. Another great comment. So Samantha, speaking from anecdotal experience, I think, which is great that we get this from our friends and listeners. She says, one of the best bosses I ever had said he will always be a cop. Spot on. Love it right there. I don't even need to read anymore. That's exactly. Here's a guy who had the mindset, you know what? I'm getting promoted, but I'm still a cop. That should be the ideology. If you're a cop right now in the NYPD or any law enforcement agency in this country, if you're getting promoted, if it's corporal or sergeant, lieutenant, whatever, if you're a sheriff, if you're getting promoted, depending on your agency, it should be, I'm still a law enforcement professional. I'm still a cop who leads other cops. Spot on. And she goes on to say, as he went up the ranks, first explained to me, all executives are just captains. I love it. Called other ranks, and cops are the backbone of the job. Yes, everyone is a cop. You should be a cop. You should be proud to be a cop who leads other cops. If you had any other ideology, how could you be effective? How can Richie Taylor actually say that he's a cop that leads other cops? You weren't doing cop work, and are you doing it now? And are they held to the same standard? That's why we have these frivolous allegations, because if you're a cop like Officer Grant Bulgarin, shout out to you, brother. I don't know why you didn't get detective yet. You should be promoted yesterday. But if you're Officer Grant Bulgarin, I'm using him as example, and this timing is just impeccable and quintessential with this, who has 40 some odd civilian complaints. To me, I'm like, wow, here's a guy who was doing his job. I read to them like, this guy's a legit cop. He was doing his job. So Officer Grant Bulgarin, don't let those CCRBs hinder you. Wear that as a badge of honor. Thank you for what you do out there. Here's a guy who's doing his job. And unfortunately, I don't know who he works for, and I'm sure he probably has good bosses, but there are a lot of guys out there like him who work for sergeants and lieutenants. Well, the sergeant and lieutenants go hands off. How do I know? Excuse me. A couple of people here put in the chat about spring allergies. Yeah, the spring allergies have hit me hard. So, and someone said ginger candy. I need that too. I don't know if that tastes too good, but I'm going to take that. But there are, Marlon, am I right? And I know you probably work for these people too. You've had great bosses. I've had great bosses, but I've had some bosses also. Well, as they got promoted, their hands got a little less involved. And people actually said to me also, they were bosses. I don't want to give up their names, but they actually said to me, Eric, why do you do all the stuff that you do? Like, you don't have to touch anybody now. Let the cops do it. I go, wait a minute. I don't know how you sleep at night. I can't subscribe to that. So I'm gonna send my cops out there to chase bad guys. They're gonna go out and get all these civilian complaints, and I'm gonna sit in the office, and I'm gonna be worry free from that. That's not right. I can't lead people like that. I don't know how you do that. And unfortunately, we see that a lot in leadership, and that's failed leadership position, where sergeants, lieutenants in different ranks, as they move up, get more distant from actual police work and say, oh, it's the cops' bird. Oh, let the cops worry about it. Oh, but you're sitting in your office and you don't have to worry about it, and your hands get nice and soft. That's a problem. That's a real problem right there. I shame on anyone. If you're in a position right now, change that now. Stop that right now. You should not have the ideology. Well, I'm a lieutenant. I made it this far, so I don't have to do police work anymore. Really? Then what the hell are you doing there? You're an administrator? Then hand in your gun and go do something else. I'm sorry. If you're not thinking, I'm a cop that leads other cops, well, I'm a lieutenant now. I'm a sergeant. I work to those. Oh, Eric, you're crazy going out there doing what you're doing. You're going to get all those complaints. Yeah, no shit, I'm going to get those complaints. If you're doing your job the way you're supposed to, your record should look like mine or Officer Grant Bulgarin. Other than that, what are you doing out there?
Yeah. You know what? I tend to think that's also a byproduct of all the administrative paperwork that you bosses get buried in, Because I saw, like, in the FIO's office when we got there, like, I think my sergeant had like a bad Comstat, and then after that he had to basically bury himself in those stats every week, And I see all of that, and I'm like, man, I do not want to be a supervisor. It's not because I don't want to be, I couldn't do it or anything, but it's because I don't want to be buried in administrative paperwork, And I see like bosses going to these Comstat meetings like every other week, like a gang stat. Come on, these stupid stats when the department has all these statistics at a button press. You just pull up a spreadsheet with all these statistics. But yet they still call bosses in every other week for some stupid meeting where nothing new gets discussed. It's just because some chief likes to hear himself talk. That is one of the problems that contributes to that. And I think if we had less meetings, fewer meetings, right, that it would kind of force bosses to not be in that mind frame where they're getting off the street also, you know. And I think it would make the department a lot more healthier, And I think it would make a lot more bosses happier too if they didn't have to bury their heads into all these stats every week, as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So for anyone that's a commanding officer in a precinct, I think what they're doing to you is an injustice. So I see many commanders, they're in a position where they have Comstat. They have to prep for that. And the amount of prep time that goes into it is just insane. Sometimes these guys have to lock themselves into the office for 3 days. And for most of this, there's so much stress and pressure put upon them for Comstat that they don't even go home. They stay and sleep at their office and go to One Police Plaza to Comstat for the stuff that they prep for. Now, I get it. You should be held accountable for your precinct, but it should not be to the point of you have to sit there and study. And now for those 3 days, you're now behind. You don't even know what's going on in your command because you've been studying for what happened the previous 28 days. So now what's new and fresh, those commanders are now behind the 8 ball. They should be held accountable. And I think they should be able to, excuse me, if it's minor questions, I'm sorry, if it's detailed questions, well, then the commander should be able to know where to get the information. Oh, I can get that information from the detective squad. I can get that from crime analysis. Let me talk to the anti-crime team. But to have them present that information in real time that they had to study for, I think the impact is actually, I think it yields negative results. I don't think it's a smart move. And I've watched commanders. We've all seen it. If you're active or retired in the NYPD, I mean, I'm curious on your thoughts of it. But most commanders, they sit and study for 3 days. So, and then after Comstat, you got to figure that's about a 4-day period. They're all stressed, full of anxiety. And for 4 days, they have no idea what's going on in their own command because they're so bogged down what happened the previous 28 days. And then they have to play catch up. It just creates more anxiety and stress. And I think actually it's someone put here, it's archaic. It's absolutely ridiculous. I saw one time one of my commanders, and he knows what I'm talking about, knew everything that's going on in the precinct. I mean, studied his ass off, right? We go to Comstat. He knows everything. And they asked him left field question that was just ridiculous because it was like, oh, I gotcha moment. This guy knew everything. A stupid question about, and it was really about flyers. Do we have flyers out there for some hate crime that's going on? It was the stupidest thing. It was like so off base, had nothing to do with anything else that was going on. It was like, oh, gotcha moments. All that, you put this guy through stress for 4 days, has no idea what's going on in his command now. But then you have, that's where the DI comes in. Then I see some commanders, I mean, they don't even know what precinct. I don't even think they know what collar breast they have. They don't even know if they work there. They get up at the podium, have no idea what's going on, and no one says a word. I mean, they're just like, oh, that was great. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you work in the 4-5. I don't know if you know that. You just spoke about the 4-3. But that's okay. And you see a couple of commanders there, like, oh, but then they got the ground ball questions. It's like, how many cops do you have in your anti-crime team? Okay, have a great day. And then I see a couple of commanders that have no idea what they're doing, and they threw their lieutenants under the bus. Yeah, shame on you for doing that. Comstat is archaic. I think someone put it there. It needs to go or needs to change. For guys to have to study for 3-4 days, ridiculous. Ridiculous. They have no idea what's going on. I mean, first of all, Marlon, I know you were an intel, so you had to provide a lot of this information for them. Absolutely ridiculous. I think it's. What are your thoughts on that? I just think it's. I don't see the benefit to it. I get it. Hold your precinct commanders accountable, but to the point that they have to study like it's an SAT, I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah. When we first got into the FIO's office, the CEO would kind of treat us like sometimes he would come in and ask for like I need a breakdown of our bird guys, you know, and I'd be there trying to finish up a warrant, right? And then all of a sudden we got to put that to the side, and I'd be annoyed about it, right? I used to get annoyed about it, but my boss would be like, "Listen, we got to do the CO. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Trust me on that." So we do it, and well, sure enough, later on, I had an incident where the sergeant at the borough inspections or investigations was trying to get me, and he called the CO, and the CO told me I'm squashing this. I don't believe him at all. And I realized that the CO was a great guy there, changed my whole thinking on him, that the sergeant was right, that this guy. So again, this is the importance of standing up for your guys also. But yeah, well, you do see some of it in the FIO's office. At least you did back then. I don't know if it's changed now, but it's this obsession, this administrative paperwork, where the job already knows the answers, and they know it better than we can do it because they have instant access to all these databases. The entire process of Comstat, in my opinion, it is archaic, and it's the way they do it is formulaic, and it's the guys who run Comstat followed a pattern of what happened years before, and you can see it when they ask these same questions. I can go up there and sit in the chief of department's role right now in Comstat because I would repeat the same things I saw in these old videos. They ask them the same sort of formulaic questions. I think the whole process is archaic, and you see it when commanders are repeating the numbers. Like, well, my guy got so and so summons in this area, and we got so and so arrests in this area. And to me, you're just spitting out statistics rather than telling us what new innovative way or what innovative ideas are you working on. That should be what Comstat's about. We already know the problem, but what are you working on to solve the problem? We don't want to hear you repeating the numbers. Who cares? In fact, I think I saw a video of Espo actually do that one time. Shut a guy down who was repeating the numbers. We had a CO around 2008 who had a terrible Comstat, and the video was playing. I don't know how they managed to play the video in the break room before the guy even got back from Comstat. We knew at that point that he was done because it was a bad Comstat. But you saw in that Comstat that they shut him down when he was repeating the numbers. And again, I think it should be about what the CO goes up there and he says what innovative ideas is he's presenting today that he's been working on, rather than just spitting out numbers, and also the problem with that now is that the way the department is now is you're waiting for like some guidelines to come down from 1PP. How much we talked about this before, how much actual autonomy does a commanding officer actually have now? I'm not sure he has any, because if he did have autonomy, then a guy would say 22 collars like say, or 28 collars like Chief Edwards, right? He probably wouldn't have been a CO because he would have lacked that experience. Okay. Now everything is micromanaged down from 1PP. So it's basically you become a CO and you already have guidelines, so it's like paint by numbers, and whereas if there was some sort of stipulations that you needed to have so and so activity as a cop, or to show you how good of a cop you were, then you have more autonomy because the job can trust your decision making more, because again, you were a good cop. Look, you've been around the place, you know how the system works, you know how to talk to people, and so on and so forth.
Great point. Whoever said it was archaic, and we both said it's archaic. Excuse me. But when we go back to that, you're right. They always, excuse me, man, wow. These spring allergies are terrible. But when we talk about the system that's in place, see, the dais in the NYPD, the upper echelon of the NYPD, already knows exactly what's going on. They already have the answers. And so it is archaic. We're wasting all this time. And I think the biggest burden is not even on the commanders; it's also on the detective squad. And I find it as an impotence for the squad. I mean, you have the squad commander. If anyone who's active retired NYPD knows how this works. But if you're an outside law enforcement agency, if you have Comstat in that, but if you're just a police enthusiast, so we have the detective squad commander that has to go to the actual Comstat and get questioned on specific cases. Well, he needs to be at the squad with those active cases that's going on, and they're asking questions already that they know about a case. They'll say, "Oh, how come this case is 4 days old and there was no video obtained?" And then the squad guy is like, "Oh, this guy was on vacation for a couple of days. I got another team that's going to do it, or he's going to get the video when he gets back. We're already coordinating it." You already know the answers to that. You have it in front of you. That could be a quick phone call to the detective squad commander. You don't need to haul his ass to Comstat for him to spend 3 hours standing at a podium talking about a case that you can just call him up on the phone. It's a 2-second question. It is archaic. I think it's an impotence. I don't see any benefit to it. Maybe at a time in the early 90s, I could see the point of it, especially when it was structured to bring crime down as a major impact. But at this point, it's a machine that runs in place. We have all the machines in place to make a quick second phone call, or even to call a commander and say, "Hey, listen, where are you deploying this? And we see this issue going on." I think Comstat is totally unnecessary at this point. To hold people accountable, but to have these stats, it's just a waste of time. Where a commander has to study for 3-4 hours. The detective squad commanders have to be dragged in. They have a lot of work, a lot of cases going on. As is the field intelligence officer, they get a lot of pressure. How many search warrants do you have? The answer should be 0 because of stupid bail reform. I can't even protect the identity of a confidential informant. How would you like me to get these search warrants? So I felt sorry for the FIOs also, the field intelligence officers. A lot of pressure, unnecessary pressure. To me, it just induced unnecessary anxiety, and it affected the entire command. You can feel it, right? Anyone, if you're active or retired, anyone that worked in the Comstat era, as soon as Comstat's coming, you can feel the whole precinct changes, the vibe, right? It's just complete anxiety over stuff that happened already, right? Yeah. So these commanders are held back from what's going on. And spot out to Ron Layson. He used to make me laugh because we would go to Comstat, and sometimes he'd spit off some of the numbers that they talk about. I'm like, you must have pulled that out of your ass. He was a good salesman. So, Ron, good job, brother.
Yeah. You definitely see that when Comstat's like happening this week, it definitely changes dynamics in the precinct. Yeah. But just to go back for a quick second about Officer Pulgarin, this was posted by Lieutenant Douchebag, who's Lieutenant Joel Ramirez. This was posted on his X that apparently that there's some sort of a ceremony at 1PP happening. I think it's happening today, and where she's going to honor Officer Pulgarin and some of the other community affairs officers who, I believe, stopped the other guy as he was trying to slither his way out of the scene. So yeah, it seems maybe people who have 1PP have heard us, and have heard the public outcry about this and the dissatisfaction that a lot of cops have had with what has happened. But I'm also gonna say that I'm probably not surprised that they wait a week to do it when the actual incident has kind of faded away and kind of left. The news cycle these days is days. It's not even weeks anymore. It's days. Okay, because we're living in a wild world where last week we're not at war. This week we're at war. This week, we're getting mass active shooters all over the country. And so and you have your government talking about UFOs again, So we're in a wild world where the news cycle is really days, okay? And where something even as big as what happened in New York City is a memory in just a week. So I'm kind of not surprised that they wait a week to do it when the initial news cycle has left, and they will no longer be faced with scrutiny for the actual incident or questions about the narrative that they were telling. But hopefully, at least Grant gets his promotion, and and again, Tish will understand that you need to encourage these guys and you need to motivate these guys, okay? And you need to follow through on your words when you say you're going to protect these cops, okay? And and following through on those words means recognizing great cops, and this is where also the department fails to kind of cultivate a great leadership, because when you see great cops, the job should at some point be pushing these guys, or getting behind these guys to follow through on their careers, and keep going up and keep doing well, keep them motivated, keep them proud to be in the NYPD, rather than you know maybe going elsewhere, especially at a time where other jobs are giving them bonuses. Jobs in, say, Florida or Texas are giving them bonuses to leave. But so again, hopefully Grant gets his shield today. But I talked about just to go back to the budget, just and do a little housekeeping, right? I have a feeling that even even Comstat is going to change. And I'm saying this because we're living in unprecedented times, not just with the news cycle, like I just said, but because of the budget situation. And I think the budget situation is going to force not only um, the city to look back at what Adams' administration did, but to look at inefficiencies in the way that we run. And they're not looking at it because they want to change the inefficiencies, but because they have no choice. And because, like Speaker Menin said, this was her response to corporate counsel not choosing to decline representation of Maddrey and Pearson, right? Uh, Wait, no, that wasn't what she said. Yeah, I didn't load it. But basically, she said the taxpayer shouldn't be burdened with that. So what I have a feeling is happening is that nobody wants to take the blame of the city's finances. And because nobody wants to take responsibility for it, right? You're going to have different sides clashing right now, okay? And the easy scapegoat is to blame the Adams administration, but going forward, they're going to have to come to grips with a lot of the inefficiencies that we have, and those inefficiencies include the way we have these ridiculous meetings that don't solve anything, okay? Where again, you're just spitting back numbers for the sake of numbers, and the quality of life is diminishing in certain neighborhoods. And I think it, these are some of the gaps that this is from Mamdani's own financial preliminary budget, right? And the red are the unfunded costs that the Adams administration kind of underreported, right? And this box where I put a blue box around this portion right here with the arrow, that in itself is the judgment claims and the suits facing the city, right? And I believe, again, I don't believe in a coincidence. I believe in cause and effect, and action and reaction, right? And part of the reason why corporate counsel is choosing not to represent Maddrey is because of this right here. Okay. Because it's going to cost the city a lot of money. Right. And they don't want that right now. So I think the city is being forced in a position right now to come to grips with the inefficiencies of a lot of agencies. And again, Mamdani himself said it, right? He called it the Adams budget crisis. Okay. That should have been our first clue that they're going to blame a lot of this on Eric Adams because, again, he's an easy scapegoat.
Yeah, I think that ultimately, if you look at the Adams budget crisis that has been coined by the Mamdani administration, I think this was the plan for the entire time. For the time that Zohran Mamdani was interviewed on our platform here, from that time going forward, they were highly aware of the financial crisis and the budget crisis going on with New York City. There's no way they could play and say ignorance is bliss. They knew exactly what was going on with the budget. And that's why I believe the entire plan was all these promises that got him elected were never going to come to fruition. Were never going to be met. They knew those promises were impossible, but very easy to just deflect and say, well, it's because of the Adams administration that we can't move forward with this. In reality, they never planned to because they were highly aware of the fiscal crisis that was going on and the spending. I mean, Timothy Pearson's cases are upwards of $800,000 that have already been paid out before the indemnification would not be met now. So what has changed, right? That's why we say there's no new evidence. This is what is happening, right? They can't pay it because of the budget. So it's just complete deflection. None of these issues were ever going to be met. It's just a complete lie. In every aspect of this, Zohran Mamdani's entire campaign was just complete smoke. None of it was ever coming to reality. It's virtually impossible for him to actually pass this stuff. Also, even if the fiscal crisis was on par where it needed to be, most of the stuff that he promised would not even be possible because it would drag us to another financial crisis anyway. So Zohran Mamdani's promises really geared towards the young voters that I'm not saying they're uneducated, but uninformed. And yes, many of these are college kids, but uninformed on the political apparatus. And the political stage is far different than what goes on in college. It's a different playing field. This is a different game. And I just think they just don't understand it. And here we are right now. We're left with this byproduct. This is the reality, what it's come down to. So if you are up at the upper echelon and you're playing with the toys in the NYPD, and be prepared. Things may change right now. You're not going to be represented because they just don't have the money and you don't have the political power. You don't have, and so someone put here, I think it was TC, talking about the ceremony for Paul Garin. Will the mayor be there? That's a great question. Will the mayor be, I mean, does it really matter? He doesn't like cops. Will the mayor be there? I don't know. That's a great question. I'm curious if he'll actually be there or not. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't show up. But I will say they have to promote Officer Grant Polgara. There's no other choice. In order to make an impact on the NYPD, you have to. But think about this also. We have a picture of Chief Edwards that's going to be iconic for years now, jumping over the 2-foot barrier, who's lauded as a hero. If you're going to put that out and symbolize him as a hero, then Officer Grant Polgara has to be promoted because we have one jumping over the barrier, but Polgara actually grabbed that perp. So you have no choice. They have to promote him. They're all, listen, every cop to me is a hero. Every day that you go on and you put that uniform on, I'm proud of you and we appreciate what you do out there. But what we see, this spotlight that has been put on Edwards and Navarro is just deflection from the reality of the political stage that's going on in New York City. It's an epic failure. And if I was Chief Edwards at this point in Navarro, I would feel used because the reality is they're using you. They're using you to deflect this entire issue. And and I hate saying this because, yes, I do appreciate the fact that they were willing to run towards action and be brave. I do. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate he ran over the barrier. I know we keep making fun of it. I do appreciate it. I don't think it's just amazing. We're not doing a circus act, but I appreciate it. I do respect every cop that's still there doing the job. But what I don't appreciate is them feeding into it, pretending with this lie that, yeah, we ran towards the bomber, we kicked the IED. You didn't know it was a bomb. You didn't know if you knew it was a bomb, that would have not been your reaction. No. Eventually, they figured out and they still tackle the perpetrator, which is, putting themselves in harm's way, but they didn't know. But they're being used and they're allowing themselves to become buffoons and look like fools because, like, yeah, I can't believe I did this. Oh, wow. And I think they're really allowing themselves to be fools in this, Marlon. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've been tokenized by not just by Tish herself, but by the media, by the guardians, by the politicians. It's look what I got, and again, it's not healthy. Okay, It's not healthy. I talked about this on Friday, how the media, especially the media and the left, right, loves to tokenize minorities in law enforcement. Okay, you could have been the 10th guy, the 100th guy in a unit, right? Because you're a minority, you're gonna be the media is gonna put you up there as being the first, even the second or third, because it's ridiculous, and it's what it is tokenization. Okay, and if chief himself, I brought this up on Friday, that if I'm the chief, I'm bringing up Grant and all these cops. Okay, and I suspect that he might have wanted to do that, especially as the public has brought up Grant a lot, right? But I suspect that he's gotten word from 1PP that he can't, because again, him being tokenized is convenient to the narrative. Okay, they don't want you asking questions of what exactly happened that day and the failures of the NYPD. And when they tokenize you, right, that also gives them a shield. Okay, what have we seen politicians love doing? Well, they love using things like racism as a shield. So are you going to question what a black chief and a black Hispanic sergeant did on that day? You racist? You're gonna question this? You racist? So I think it's convenient for the narratives, and again, it's not the job to be doing things like this is just not healthy, and we've seen that reflected in the unhappiness of cops at this situation, and not the full truth being out there.
I think you laid out a great point, and let's give the benefit of doubt. Like, I don't know Edwards, but I can tell you this: it's like when I watched the movie Scarface, one of my favorite movies. Anybody watch that movie? If you remember Al Pacino, when he's playing Tony Montana, he tells Stephen Bauer, who plays his buddy, right? Manny. He says, "It's in the eyes, Chico. It's in the eyes, right? You could tell who someone is by the eyes." And I look at Edwards, right? I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. I look at him and look at his eyes. I think he's probably a nice guy. And he seems like he's probably a good guy. I know a lot of people I say there's a difference between nice, but I see in the eyes, and he looks like a nice guy. And his intentions might have been well and good. I don't know. Maybe he had a conversation with them and said, "Shit, I didn't know what was going on. I just ran over the barrier towards the action." Maybe he said, "Shit, we failed. I didn't have everything in place. I didn't know I could have SOG here. I don't know how the protest element works." I'm only guessing here, but I think they put their arm around him, and we all know how the NYPD says, "Hey, you did a great job. One more star is looking really good on you. You ran towards that bomb, didn't you, right? You knew it was a bomb, right? You ran towards that bomb, and your sergeant, he kicked it, right? Because he was brave, right? Those 3 stars are looking pretty good." And that's what I think happened. I put my money on it. And I know in the NYPD, man, one thing I learned is when an arm comes over your shoulder or someone's tapping your leg, it ain't a nice gesture. When someone puts their arm on your shoulder like, "Hey, kid," yeah, that's that moment where we're about to use you. Because I know I had plenty of commanders. They put that arm around you. I'm like, uh-oh. I know when that arm came around. It's like, yeah, man, we could use a couple more guns around here. I was like, oh, I guess I'm getting a couple more CCRBs. Here's another time I'm not going to be represented, right? Yeah, that's why I used to tell my vision's much clearer on overtime, because at least I get something out of it. But yeah, I mean, that is, I think it was used. I really do. I think they both of them be used. I think they were used like it was. I mean, it's the perfect opportunity. We have a young black chief, a young working with a Hispanic sergeant, and I'm like, I don't know Edwards, but from his appearance, and I think I'm a pretty good judge of character, I can't see that guy saying like, "Yeah, I charged towards the bomb." I can see him saying like, "Shit, I didn't know what was happening. I ran towards it." I think that would be a normal action, a normal response. I think they put the arm around it. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Okay, because remember when we talked about the incident in Times Square where they let the guy walk through with the fake gun. There was word that things were hot in 1PP. You know, that Tish didn't like the situation. And now days later, you see another failure, right? Another security failure. She did not want that at all. You know, she did not want the media to run with that at all because that looks terrible on her leadership. So I 100% think this, again, as we've talked about before, this was narrative readjustment, and this was all a distraction to keep the media from asking, uh, um, from scrutinizing the events and from scrutinizing the mistakes of leadership on that day and of Tish's, overall management of the department.
I mean, I just kind of think of logic, right? Just being logical. I'm put myself in that position. If I ran towards a bomb, and because I had no idea it was a bomb, right? I put myself in some crazy action. I would want to let the public know I'm not an idiot. I'm like, I had no idea that's a bomb. If I knew it was a bomb, I would try to get everyone the hell out of there. Yeah. You know, I've done some pretty crazy stuff in my time, but not that crazy. I'm not running towards a bomb. No, I think I think we all have limitations and capabilities, and I think that's where I hit my limit. Like, okay, I'm not running towards a bomb. And it's not that I have amazing training. I mean, I learned if you could see the bomb could see you. I think that was enough for me. But we talked about that, and I think every cop should go. Going to New Mexico, seeing when they put those bombs up and they do those explosions, it really opens up your eyes. And when they did, I don't know if you did the one mall when they did the explosion simulated. They exploded a car, and I think we were about a half a mile away, and you felt it. Just imagine the impact that would have had in Times Square. So I think everyone should get that type of training to really understand how dangerous these bombs could be. And that's why I just don't believe the story. I don't believe that they knew. I hope that they didn't know, because if you knew and you ran towards it, I don't know if you just got giant balls or you just plain stupid. I don't know. That's to me is crazy. You're running towards a bomb. Come on.
Yeah. Again, we talked about it, but I see a guy lighting something like that. I'm thinking, oh shit, he's gonna throw that meat, or that's gonna explode. So again, as we talked about it, and we broke it down. The executive perspective broke it down.
They did a good job, by the way.
Yeah. We don't think they knew, and I personally don't think Chief realized it until the perp was reciting the Quran on the ground, because you can see the Chief was over him on the ground, and then let me get this off the screen for a second. And then the Chief gets up, and then he tells them to clear the area, and then he gets on the radio. I think that was the oh shit moment, that when it really hits them, oh shit, this is legit. Okay. But what you're seeing on the screen there is just the page from New Mexico Tech. This is from their website. I'm not sure if FEMA still does it. I'm pretty sure they do though. But you guys
for it too.
Yeah. So if the job won't send you, you can do this on your own as a first responder. You can get there on your own. Now you're gonna have to pay the costs up front, right? But you'll certainly be able to expense those out on your taxes. And again, I think this is very helpful, especially in the world that we live in now, where things in the Middle East don't seem like they're getting any better, And again, as the tensions rile up there, you're unfortunately gonna see more lunatics try and shift the public's opinion on the war one way or the other, right? And so this is maybe something that would really benefit you guys if you do on your own.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're being used, and I think that the NYPD under the helm of Jessica Tisch is making liars out of them too. And I think they look like fools, to be honest. There's a lot of people. I've seen a lot of positive reaction. I don't think people are digging under the surface, and they're like, "Oh, well, I heard people say, "Oh, the NYPD's back." I don't know if you heard that. I heard a lot of that. Like the NYPD's back. Yeah. Look, but the reality is, I just think they're being used, and I think now they're actually they got suckered into it and they're lying to the public. Oh, we ran towards it, and we're happy to help. Yeah, of course you're happy to help. Of course you run towards the action, but you didn't know it was a bomb. You didn't know. I will put my life on it. That's how confident I am in this. I'll put my last dollar that they didn't know. There's no way they know. It's just not a normal reaction. Test logic. It doesn't meet logic. And that's okay. But let's be honest. Why can't you just say, man, I had no idea what the hell was going on. We lost track of what was happening. There was some mismanaging, misplanning. And thank God we're okay. We learned from it. I would respect that. Would you? I would respect it. If they said we had no idea, I just ran towards the action. We made some mistakes. We're going to learn from it, move forward. Man, I'd be like, great. But instead of parading them around like they're two trophies, like Edwards and Navarro are two trophy wives. I mean, come on. I think it might even be eating them up too, because they ran with them, put him on these talk shows, and it's all been about him jumping over the barrier. And I hope at some point that he's saying to himself, like, damn, I'm used. And every person that is black or Hispanic on the job that's highly qualified should feel used too. You should feel like, damn, look at them using him because he's black and using him because he's Hispanic. Why just talk about the good job that they're doing for being cops? Come on, And I know and that's why I do think there is some good there. Right? He tried, right? He tried. I think it was on CBS Morning where he said, it's not about me, it's about the other guys. Mm-hmm. I think he tried, and I saw the talk shows that he had after that kind of changed. So I think that arm came around and was like, don't worry about Grant Polgarian. That guy's got a lot of CCRBs, kind of like that Eric Dim. Let's talk about you and Navarro. That was a great kick. You ever watch the Giants? I can see it right now. So listen, if you're active or retired and that arm comes around you, if it's Jeffrey Maddrey or somebody else, get that arm off you.
Yep. Yeah. I 100% agree. 100% agree. Yeah. So let's see, 2 hours 10 minutes in, guys. If you haven't already, we'd appreciate if you just hit the like button and share us out. And again, this is how we grow, and we, by being a even bigger platform, we can provide that platform for whistleblowers and for people who can get out ahead of these problems, and that kind of holds the feet of the department to the fire, like it did under Eric Adams. So if you can, just hit the like button and share us out. And we appreciate you guys joining us today. And before we get to the coffee and donuts, just to wrap it up, any final thoughts on this, Eric?
Yeah, listen, 2 hours into it, like, share, subscribe. Shout out to my brother John, taking a week off. He deserves it, man. Really the glue to this platform. And John, enjoy your week off. Maybe John will get a little bit taller during this time. We'll be stretching out the pull-up bar. Everybody's been making fun of his height for the past couple of days. I don't know why they're making fun of his height. I think he's like an inch shorter than me, if anything. I'm 5'10". I think he's maybe 5'9". So he's not that short. So I know he'll probably be out there. I can only see John trying to flex as much as he can so he can do some solo videos in his tank top. So have a good time with your family, brother. Like, share, and subscribe. 2 hours into it. We really appreciate it. Chat is awesome today, friends and listeners. Michael Taramina, what's up, brother? If I think this is somebody I know, he says Eric Dim, good guy. Oh, yeah, good guy, nice guy. Huge difference. A huge difference. We did an episode, John Marlon, if you remember, we did an episode one time. John and I, we did a episode about nice guy. It was centered around Joe Fox. We got a lot of heat for that one.
Yes, I remember that one.
Let's be honest. Why not? Let's be honest. Nice guys, good guys. They say nice guys finish last, but not in the NYPD. They do pretty well. So, yeah. Coffee and donuts. I didn't see too many. I don't know if there is any. Let's get to it.
Not too many.
Popeye David says we only shrink as we get older. Yeah.
But
more places than one.
Let's see. $2 from Billy Bikes, 1129. Can Curtis Lewa get in the next election? I think he can. I mean, I don't see why not. I think In fact, I was saying, during the last election cycle that I almost feel sorry for Curtis being in this election because, right, you either lose because, again, we saw the three-card Mamdani that was being played, right? Or if you had gotten into City Hall, you face the budget problems that Mamdani is now facing, okay? So to me, it was like a lose-lose. So the next election, it might be even better chance for him because, again, a lot of the problems that Curtis himself was pointing out during this election cycle, and Curtis was the only one who could articulate the budget issues and the problems that we are facing with businesses fleeing the city and the burden it puts on the budget. Right? He was the only one who could articulate that. Now it's becoming obvious to people what is at stake here, okay? Because these politicians are forced to talk about it. So I think in a lot of ways, the next election might be even better for him.
I think it's a great point. I think that clearly he was the only one that was aware of the budget, and he actually acknowledged it and didn't pretend.
Yeah.
I just think that, he's getting older. I think he's got a lot of stamina. I think he's in great shape for his age. He's got a lot of stamina. But he had to work so hard on this campaign. He really busted his ass. It's quite tiring and exhausted. I hope he has esteem for the next time if he really wants to do it. But in my opinion, I don't think he has to. I think he's really made a mark in New York City. He's done so much in so many different facets. I think at this point he doesn't even need to. If he wants to, it would just be another notch on his belt. But I think at this point, I think he made his mark by even losing in this one. It showed how flawed the politics are in New York City. And I think if he ended his career or just his political face with this loss, I think it's actually a win. So and he also adds 2A USA. That's right, Second Amendment, brother. I'm with you. So shout out, thank you for the coffee and donuts. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Let's see what else we got here. We've got
bring it on.
We've got My Visual Zone. $4.99 to the podcast. My Visual Zone says, like the show without John. You guys were good with John. All the I don't know about that Visual Zone. What you mean? You don't like Angry John?
Wait, what is that? Like the show without John. You guys were good with John. All that guy does is bitch and moan. He looks like he's like 4 feet tall.
He brought John down to 4 feet this time. Wow.
Nah, John's great, man. John's a great guy. I think John's misunderstood. He's actually his angry rant's pretty funny. John's a good guy. I wouldn't team up on this network with John if he wasn't a good guy. And that's the truth, So I like John. I think John, has his own style, and I think that's what's great about this network. But we do appreciate it. I think everyone has their own style, and kind of like I always say, we're kind of like the Wu-Tang Clan. Like we're all our own MCs. Marlon has his own style. I have my own, and same thing for John and Tom and Pete and Rob and Ron. We don't all follow the same routine, so I think that's what's great. If you have different tastes, if you want to watch Executive Perspective, if you like John, if you like me or Maul, who cares? If you hate me, I don't care. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Visuals on. Just come on, give John some room, okay? Give
him
some time. You'll love John. Come on, none of us would be here without John. By the way, I wouldn't be here most definitely without John. So
listen, John. He started speaking out about the vaccine mandate when it was really unpopular.
Yep.
I was still on the job, and when I heard, there's this guy speaking out about what's going on, I'm like, who? Like Johnny Mac. Like I think I told the story 1,000 times, and people probably bored with it, but I'm like, who's Johnny Mac? Because that was never on social media. That was not. Listen, I'm a disaster on social media as it is right now, and I'm like, who's this guy Johnny Mac? And then they showed me pictures. Oh, I know John. We worked together as rookies, and that's when I already knew. I didn't want to. I believe in the art of war. I wasn't showing all my cards. Guys didn't know if I was staying. They didn't know what my next move was. And that's a rule should be in your life. Don't tell people your next move. Let them guess. And when you're weak, make them think you're strong. When you're strong, make them think you're weak. So don't play cards. So when I retired, it was kind of a shock. But before that, I called John. I said, dude, I got plans to speak out about Civilian Complaint Review Board, fight against this, the discipline matrix. And so, I said, oh yeah, let me interview you, and I said, yeah, I'm coming on. And then afterwards I said, listen, dude, let's just go out. Let's team up together. And here we are, and John's been the glue to this thing. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Like I said, there was a time where I was gone from the job and I was just angry and I didn't know how to voice, my issues with the department. And I was making memes on social media and I was commenting. And then finally John reached out to me and he was like, if I want to join the podcast. And let me tell you guys, I wouldn't be here without John, and I would have been a lot more, I'd have been a lot depressed about the situation without John and Eric. So,
Well, I got a question because I was curious. Remember in the beginning, I asked you. I'm just curious. How did you know that like? How did you know to trust me and John that we wouldn't out you? Because when you first on your memes, I was like, I was pretty cool that he trusted that, John and I wouldn't say anything. But how did you know? Like, these guys are not gonna out me.
yeah, well, I was watching the show too, and first I noticed them on social media, and then I found out you guys had the show, and then I watched the show and I realized you guys were forthright and were honest and unfiltered.
Thanks, brother.
And I said, and you guys were saying the same things that a lot of us thought. We just, didn't have the courage to come out and say it on camera. So, when John asked me to join, I was like, yeah, no doubt,
Yeah, no, John does a lot for this network, man. He really does. He does a lot, and it's much appreciated. So he deserves a week off. Really, shout out to you, brother. Thank you so much.
Yep. So now we have $10 from Popeye. Damn it! What's going on, Popeye?
$10 for shrinkage. He says, "Uh-oh."
$10 for shrinkage.
No, we need a lot more for shrinkage.
Yeah. Popeye.
Yo, Popeye, he's a good man, brother.
Yeah. Good friend of the show. I
Yes.
spoke to him a couple months ago. Yeah, he's a great guy.
He is a great guy.
Yep. And we got $1.99 from 516 Diecast. Present for duty. It's about time they to taste reality.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. It's true. Reality is. It seems like reality is about to smack him in the face. And that reality is the budget situation. And
it's funny you said the budget. It must be a humbling experience, right? I mean, think about it. You're Jeffrey Maddrey, right? I mean, this guy's life was like going like this. I mean, he was loved by the community. I mean, you have to admit he was very good with the community. Like that was his thing. He was, he's a likable guy. I see the different side of him with some of the cops. I see him be a bit of a bully. Like, one time we had a lieutenant was asking questions at some training and he got transferred in 2 seconds because some friend of Maddrey didn't like some questions. So I see a different side, but, he was flying high and a lot of power at the top, and now he's stuck with this lawsuit on his own. So it must be a humbling experience.
Yeah. True. And it's unfortunate. I do feel sorry for him. Even though he put himself in that situation, but it's just a damn shame that you like basically ruined your career and now this could potentially bankrupt him too, so it's a sad situation overall,
I feel sorry that these guys don't understand and they really need to explain this. I saw this, it was on social media. I don't remember. I saw this thing and the guy explained it. I'm like, wow, this is great. The guy says that he was, in charge of some big company organization, and they put him on like private jets, and he got like all these fancy cups and fancy dinners, and he said, and then he retired from this company, and then he had to do something with them, and this time he had to go on like a regular flight. He gets a styrofoam cup, not the fancy dinner, and he goes, what he realized is they weren't giving it to me, all that was for the position. And that's what you have to understand. When you're moving up in leadership, you're holding a position. And that the reason why you have the power and all those amenities is because of that position. It's not because of you. It's not, and that's why these guys don't want to, I guess they do face kind of reality. They don't want to leave the job. They want to stay there forever because they know they're going to lose those things. But you have to respect it's there for that position, but not there for you, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So now we have No, I said that already. I think we got a new one from My Visual. So My Visual, it gives us 199. He says, Eric, talk about John's leadership skills or not. Well, yeah, My Visual, we just did. Again, John is the leader of this platform. John. No, we wouldn't be here without John. So
Yeah.
there's not much left for us to say about that.
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, I think that people have a tendency. I think John, he's a straight shooter, right? So he puts it out there straight, and sometimes it comes off abrasive. But I know he means well, and I like that style because I mean, there's plenty of times behind the scene, John and myself and Marlon were coming up with ideas, and we're all pretty straight shooters with each other and shut each other down. But I like that, because at least I know what I'm getting up close. But yeah, John's the glue to this thing. There's no doubt about it. He does a great job. He works really hard. And I'm not trying to sell you to like him. That's on you. But and I know John wouldn't care either way, which I like that, But he's a damn good guy. And he works really hard on the network. And he really cares. And he really cares about the mission. And that's I would have never teamed up with John if I didn't see that in him. And I really do appreciate what he does. All kidding aside, I really do appreciate what he does. And he spends a lot of time on social media. He really does care because and I know people don't want to believe it, but I can tell you how much money we made this year. And this is it right here. I can write out a piece of paper for you. It's zero. So believe me, we all care. And yeah, John, really, thank you for everything that you do, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, guys. So again, we appreciate all the super chats, and we appreciate you guys joining us this morning. And I thought the chat was very lively this morning. So awesome job this morning, chat. And again, we love the lively discussion, and we love you guys jumping in. And if you were watching on LinkedIn, I'm sorry, but LinkedIn went down too. And again, we have no control over that, but we say for you to join us on YouTube, where the conversation is most lively. So
yeah, I'll say again, 2 hours and 17 minutes into it, and thank everyone. Like, share, and subscribe. John, thank you for everything that you did, brother, to pioneer this platform. We appreciate it. We're all a team here, and I love you, brother. Honestly, thank you. And seriously, and I love this entire network, everybody. Marlon, it's been like a hell of experience. I would never. It's interesting that none of us had a relationship on the job, and we have this great relationship here now. John and I worked for a short time together as rookies. Ron and I worked a little bit together. He was my boss's boss, so we had some great interaction. But on a whole, most of us didn't spend much time together. So now, in the afterlife of the NYPD on this platform, we've really built a family and a team, and we really do feel that our friends and listeners are a part of this. We're all growing together, and it's a great feeling. It's very therapeutic to speak about what goes on with the NYPD, New York City, our careers, and what we could do to make it better. In the end, one thing, when I was in Iraq, I'll never forget this captain said to me, and I live by that. And I think I said it before, but I really do live by this, and I hope you do too. He said, no one gives a shit about your money one day, and, no one cares about how many cars you have, what your houses are, and all you're going to have one day is your stories, right? You're going to be an old man one day, hopefully, right? You're going to be sitting around, and when you're an old man, they don't care how good you looked or what they just care about your stories. What are going to be your stories? So do everything you can in your life. If there's any fears, just do it. If there's something that I'm afraid of, that makes me want to do it more. That's why I went out and boxed, because I didn't want to get punched in the face, and I did it, and I got into jiu-jitsu. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can handle wrestling, and I got into jiu-jitsu, and do all the things that you are afraid of, tackle it even higher. There's certain things I'm afraid of heights, and I go out and do things and then that's how we face things in life. And thank you, everyone. We appreciate all the support, the friends and listeners. Hey, we got one more coffee and donuts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Modern Samurai. Thank you for the $20. Modern Samurai says late to the show. A small donation to help John get over the high curves and crosswalks. NYPD's worth saving. Yes. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Please, and don't talk shit about John, man. He's good people. He really is. If it wasn't for John, this platform would not even be here. So that's the reality, right? He does a lot, brother. But with that being said, and Stephen S., thank you, brother. We always appreciate it. Stephen S. is a great man, former LAPD, real life New Yorker, supports this podcast, great friend to the podcast. We support you, brother.
Yes. So just some quick housekeeping before we go. 10-4 Tavern tomorrow. Another great episode is on the way. This time, the tavern has Detective Strafford from the Cold Case Squad. He's going to be on, and should be very interesting hearing about those. A lot of those cold cases sometimes are very, very interesting. How they eventually catch the perp, But so I expect another great episode, and we had a great one last week as well. So if you happen to have missed that, just go back and check that. Not sure who's going to be on the executive perspective this week or what the topic is going to be, but you can expect it's going to be another great breakdown. And again, if you're that rookie captain, that rookie executive, I think it behooves you to watch those episodes. And if you have a question, again, to ask the executives, because there's nothing, no substitution for experience.
Listen, I love the theme of 10-4 Tavern. Pete Faselli and Tom Joyce do a hell of a job of, and it shows you that these are great guys, right? Because all these esteemed people from the entire nation want to come on their show. They have great conversations, and I love the theme of it, right? They usually start out with a drink, and then they have a conversation interview, and it's not really about the drink, right? It's what it symbolizes, right? It symbolizes, cops going out to the bar or to the restaurant or just talking together and having like a therapy session, talking about what you do at work and police stories. So shout out to them. Awesome show. Great cast of guests from the entire nation. We appreciate them. An executive perspective doing a hell of a job. Their show last week was fire. Really, Ron and Rob, thank you to you both for what you do for this platform. We appreciate it. So, man, I think I did enough kissing ass on this show today. So telling everybody how great they are, but I know it's the truth. It is what it is. I don't know, kissing ass for what? I don't know what I get out of it, but no, but these guys are great. I love them. They're awesome.
Yeah, guys. So do you have anything else, Eric? I think that's pretty much a wrap for us today.
No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, guys. Listen, enjoy. We'll see you Wednesday, of course, and be prepared tomorrow at 10-4 Tavern. If you haven't checked them out, check them out already. 10-4 Tavern. What time are they? I know John doesn't know, so.
Yeah, 7:05 p.m., guys. 7:05.
Yeah, that's what John should be doing this week. Instead of working out and trying to flex your tan and trying to get taller, study the times of these shows. All right, John, if you're listening right now, just study the times. Wednesday, all right, 5:05 p.m. So we'll see you then, everybody. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for joining us today, and have a great day. And if you're on patrol, stay alert, guys. Stay alert and pay attention, because again, the situation in the Middle East is getting more tense, and there are going to be lunatics out there again. So pay attention and do your job. Okay,
do your job.
That's
right. Finest Unfiltered, baby. Thank you, Mom.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?